Awesome. Well, Kilby, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are thrilled to have you. To get us started a little bit, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what got you started writing?
Sure. So, wow, I don't remember a time when I didn't write. So first of all, yes, I'm Kilby. I am from the East Coast of the United States, from the Mid-Atlantic, though I now live on the West Coast. And I've been writing my whole life. I come from a writing family. My dad wrote a lot of books, especially in his retirement. He was actually legally blind, and he would take a Sharpie and he would write in these heavy letters on paper. Then he would put them in the mail and send them to me so that I could type them up. My sister in the high school horse poll was voted most likely to win a Pulitzer, and she didn't become a novelist, but she became a poet. So I feel like I have a ton of people around me who are just natural storytellers. Professionally, I worked in marketing for a long time. I work in fundraising. Both of those are sort of storytelling professions. So I just love stories. I love consuming stories. I love writing stories. And I was hoping you would call on me for the name game, because I'm always watching something and I'm always listening to something.
Well, we are definitely going to talk about that. Don't you worry.
Yes, I just love stories. Yeah.
Cool. Well, what was the first, since you said you've been like a lifelong reader, you know, obviously you've loved it from the moment that you could read. What was the first book you remember loving?
I don't remember the first, well, the very first book I remember loving was The Strange Disappearance of Arthur Cluck. Ooh, which is a children's book about, it's like a little children's mystery where a baby chick disappears from the barn and his mother can't find him, and his mother needs to find him and asks the pack rat Templeton and all these people. And it was just this kid's book that, you know, I don't think it was ever really famous kid's book, but I just remember it. And I remember when my kids were born, I ordered it I found it on eBay and ordered it for like a lot of money because I wanted to read my kids that book too. And I had lost track of my copy. So I've always loved stories. In terms of novels, I probably, you know, I was a child of the 80s. So I remember reading a lot of V.C. Andrews because it was really available. Delicious. It was everywhere. And my mother had no idea what it was, because if she had, she never would have let me read it. But I remember doing a lot of sort of like, oh, what is there to read in the supermarket? Hey, mom, can I buy this? There was a lot of that. Then later in my childhood, I think when I was 5, we moved to an area where I was walking distance from the library. So then the library was one of the only places that I was allowed to walk by myself. You know, I sort of had this radius where it's like, yeah, you can walk that far, but you can't walk that far. So the library was a place that I was allowed to go. And I spent so much time there, like doing everything, not just books, but magazines. And I would like check out the microfilm and all kinds of things.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I love this, like the freedom of being a little kid and just losing yourself in the library for hours.
Right. And again, it was the 80s. So parenting was very lax. There wasn't a lot of supervision. Which I think honestly is unfortunate. Like a ton of things that I didn't let my kids do were things that my parents weren't really paying attention to, and I was fine. But it made for a childhood where I was really free to explore.
Yeah. And you know, giving yourself that time to, you know, imagine stuff where you could become a writer after that.
Totally.
Yeah. So then let's jump into, you know, you splitting your brain in 2 spots. You've got your marketing, your career there, but then you've also been a storyteller, and you're writing, and you're getting ready to publish professionally. What got you to romance? Like, what was the thing that sparked your interest in that?
So I'm actually this is going to sound odd, but I'm actually more of a movie and television person than I am a book person.
I love it. Me too.
So I got into romance through fan fiction. So I was watching shows, and I would watch these shows and I would be really upset because, you know, how shows are, they kind of bait you with a romance, and like, you know, the non-romancy writers think that it's cute to like put in a little romance, but they don't really follow through with it. So I got really into fan fiction. I actually, my first fandom was Dawson's Creek, which actually was a romance type series, but Dawson was obviously not the person Joey should have been with. It was clearly Pacey. So I had to like write an alternative universe and make the world, you know, make sense again. But I wrote in other fandoms. I wrote in like The West Wing. I wrote in Prison Break. There was a romance that I really liked in Prison Break, but of course he was in prison. So there was a lot of alternate universe, Prison Break romance. And the final fandom that I wrote in was Twilight. And what happened there was I was writing the Twilight fandom. I was a pretty popular author. I had a lot of readers. And then I stopped and I had a baby. And I woke up from my post-baby haze like 3 years later, and everybody who had been writing at the same time as me was like a New York Times bestselling author. So that was really, I looked at that and I was like, oh, all of my friends are writing original fiction now. Why aren't I writing original fiction? And that's really what prompted me to publish on my own.
I love that. So then, you know, going from Twilight to this, like what was the first stories that you were ready to start telling?
Actually, I didn't start telling stories that were terribly new until a couple of years into my career, because I took stories that I thought were good stories as fan fiction and I adapted them to original fiction. So my debut novel, Snapdragon, was originally a prison break fan fiction, and I had published parts of it as that, and I sort of originalized it. That's not a word, but I originalized it.
I like it. Go for it. You're a writer. You make them up.
I can make them up. That's the great thing about American
Exactly.
English. We can turn nouns into verbs. So I would say that I dipped my toes in with popular fan fiction, and then later ended up writing more original stories. And it impacted my career in a really interesting way, because I was writing in fandoms with mostly white characters. And the protagonists of a lot of my earlier books are these sort of all white casts. And one thing that happened that I didn't anticipate was I got a lot of flack from authors who were like, oh, Kilby, Kilby writes fiction, but she doesn't write Black people and blah, 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 blah. So all of these interesting things happened as a result of me doing that earlier in my career. But I would say that everything that I've published over the past 3 years has been really original and not involving characters that I originally envisioned within a certain fandom.
Oh, I love that. Well, then let's jump right into It Takes a Villa, which is your latest novel. Like, tell us a little bit about it and what inspired it. Yay, it's so beautiful. I love this cover too. I've just been like, just dying over it.
So something that I haven't told you about myself is that I used to be a food, wine, and travel writer.
Well, now I need to know everything about that.
Okay, so here's what happened. I am sort of a business school person. Like, I met my husband in business school, and I spent some time after business school having these big corporate jobs, and they were kind of burnout jobs, and I wasn't completely happy in them. And in the big recession of 2008, I got laid off. And I was like, wow, it's going to be really hard for me to find a job. And we want to have a baby next year. And like at the time, I had this huge safari to Africa planned. And I was like, well, I can't start looking for a job if I'm going to go away for a month, like 6 weeks from now. So I decided, and we had like recently moved to California. So I was like, I really haven't seen all of California. Why don't I just become a travel writer? I've always wanted to do that. So I started, basically, I'm interested in luxury travel. So I started covering luxury travel to all the places in California that I hadn't been. And I basically saw all of California, and a lot of California is wine. So I went and I got certified as a sommelier so that I could start writing more about wine. And it was just amazing. But all of that came on top of me having lived in Europe for a lot of my 20s, because I thought I was going to be a diplomat. This is like all this, like,
Kilby, you are so cool. You're the coolest person.
I wanted to be a diplomat, and I thought I was going to be one. And then I got a job offer with the United Nations, and they only paid $39,000 a year. But this is me. Like, I went to undergrad in New York, and I was really, really sick of being broke. And I was like, I can't do this. And then I got a really shiny offer with a .com that was paying a lot more money. But I had spent all this time like living in other places and learning a bunch of languages. So part of my background, like anything, the precursor to any travel book that I've written is that I've lived everywhere, and I've been to so many places, and I just love travel. So my inspiration for writing It Takes a Villa was being cooped up because of the pandemic and wishing that I could be in places that I love. So this was about me sort of like writing myself back to a place that I knew that I loved and imagining a romance taking place there.
Oh, I love that so much. So now I need to know, like, where has been your favorite place that you got to write about on your when you were doing travel blog or travel writing?
I was doing my travel writing. I really liked writing about Africa. Because I think that, as a Black American, so I'm a Black American with no tie to Africa. Like, I don't have, like, my parents were born in America, and their parents and their parents' parents on both sides, right? So I don't really have a tie to Africa. but it's a big deal sort of, you know, being a Black American and going to Africa for the first time. Because Africa is this like sort of mythical place that you're from, maybe, but not really, but you've heard about it, and it's clearly important to like the overall experience of like being Black in the world. So I wrote an essay about my first time in Africa that won like second place in a big contest that I was excited about. But it was about my first morning waking up and like realizing that I was in Africa, and my plane had landed really, really late the night before. So I had like not seen anything. And it was about my experience of waking up and sort of like seeing where I was and just like having that experience.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. I love that so much. Okay, so we're going to switch now into our fun, just sort of fresh facts portion where I'm just going to throw out some fun questions at you and you answer them how you feel suited. Okay. You ready? Okay. So first, how important are tropes to you with your writing process?
They're more important the longer I write, because I realize how important they are to readers. But they're usually, when I think about a story, usually when I cook up a story in my mind, I'm not thinking of tropes yet.
Okay. So then what is your favorite genre to read?
I read a lot of post-apocalyptic dystopia.
Interesting. What have you read? Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's very dark. It's funny. I was on a rom-com panel this past weekend at Book Bonanza, and all the rom-com authors were like, "Yeah, we can. Everything that we consume is super dark. Like we watch, like I watch all the serial killer documentaries on Netflix. So post-apocalyptic dystopia. Like I recently reread Station 11 because they came up with a television series on it.
Right.
But Station 11 had been one of my favorites for a long time. And I remember when the TV series came out, I vividly remembered scenes from the book, even though I hadn't read it in like years.
Which one do you like prefer one to the other? Specifically with Station 11, did you like the book more or the show more?
I was so pleasantly surprised by the show. I was really surprised by how certain things were exactly as I had pictured them, like exactly. And then there were other things that were like better than anything I could have ever imagined. I think Station 11 might be the only show that I've ever consumed in the history of having experienced both, where I can say, I think the show gave it something that the book didn't.
I love that. Yeah, that's so cool. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, so I'm just like, it's on my list, but I have to be in the mood for it. Our book club is very pro murder content. We love a good true crime and a good murder documentary. So I know Lady Sarah is going to have tons of follow-ups for you in our.
I see that. I see her comment. I too love all the murders on TV. I don't know why.
It's cathartic.
Like,
somebody. Yeah, and there's
always
like.
It is.
I find that the solution is always helpful. At least like the fact that some bad guy gets caught. There's some sort of repercussions for that. That's what I tell myself, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, very true.
All right. So what is a genre that you never want to read again?
I think some of the dark romance, I'm not as into. I think it's not escapist enough for me. Even though there are some really, really interesting characters and interesting situations in dark romance. But I'm also the kind of person where I go through phases. So like never say never, right? I do the same thing with like wine. Like I'll drink the same kind of wine for a year and then like I'm not drinking that anymore and then I'm drinking something else for a year. So I feel like dark romance is something where that phase feels like I hadn't picked one up in a long time.
Yeah. What is the wine that pairs perfectly with It Takes a Villa?
What pairs perfectly with It Takes a Villa? I mean, I think it would probably be. Wow, you're going to be sorry. You're going to be sorry you asked this question.
I'm excited.
Okay. I'm debating even whether to even go into this.
Do it.
There's something interesting about Italian wine. So like most of the wine world is interested in something that's called typicity of style. So what that means is that like when you go to Napa, like I live near Napa, when you go to Napa and you drink a Napa Chardonnay, most winemakers want it to taste like a Napa Chardonnay, where, you know, it tastes oaky, It's a little bit heavy. It's not like a light Chardonnay with like some of the French Chardonnays are that are like sort of made in a sort of chalky type of soil, right? Italy's wine culture is completely different. Italy like Italian winemakers want their wine to taste different from the wine next door, even if it's the same grape and even if it's the same region. So that's the strange thing about Italian wine, is that Italian wine is meant to be its own thing. It's meant to be individual. So I can't think of a wine that I think would go with this book, because I feel like Italian wine is like by the bottle, and that sounds like such a cop-out response. But I feel like if I were like drinking wine on the Amalfi Coast, like I don't think that there's one wine that I would be drinking that would be the wine that goes with the book.
Oh my gosh. Well, now I need like wine recommendations. This is just wonderful. And yeah, exactly. A wine tour of Italy, I think, is definitely in our future. Okay. What is your favorite time of day to read?
I would say morning. I really like, and I'm an audiobook listener. I barely read like paper books at all. Really the morning is my favorite time to both consume and create media.
Okay. I was gonna say, and then the follow-up to that is, what is your favorite time of day to write?
The morning.
The morning.
Yeah, I'm sharpest in the morning, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is, because I used to be a total night owl, and I don't understand what flipped, but something flipped.
So with your audiobooks, this is very controversial in our group. Do you listen at the true speed, or do you speed it up?
I speed it up. I can't listen at true speed.
Yeah, same.
We got
another vote.
Yeah, when I had my audiobooks produced, it was the same thing where I couldn't, like, they sent me the files so that I could proofread them. And since it wasn't through like the Audible app, I had to find a way to speed them up, because I literally couldn't listen to them at the regular speed.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. When you write, are you doing typing, or do you also dictating as well?
I do a lot of dictating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's cool. Awesome. Okay, let's see what's next. So our next question is, what is a hobby that you have, a new hobby or practice that you've picked up recently?
I have started baking.
Ooh.
And I've always been a good baker, but I started baking different things. So like, especially during the pandemic, I really started watching the Great British Baking Show. And it was just like, I had never baked before, because there were all sorts of puddings and, other British things that I had never like attempted, that I didn't have the pans for or anything like that. So that has been my sort of rediscovery of baking, even though I'm like really good at like American baking.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a signature baked good that you are just like the best at?
I make a really good rum cake.
Oh,
like really good. Yeah.
Yum. I love rum cake. Okay. Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
I don't know who my first was. Actually, that's probably not true. I think I read some YA where I had some book boyfriends. I read a lot of, I didn't mention this, but I read a lot of like miscellaneous YA. I was obsessed with summer camp when I was younger, because summer camp was like my favorite place, like sleepaway camp. Mm-hmm. So I read a lot of books with like hunky, like boys at camp.
Yeah, I love that. That is so funny. I remember also like in that early phase of YA, there really was just like V.C. Andrews, Christopher Pike, and then like, maybe some Babysitters Club. So it was just whatever slim pickings YA that you could find. So I miss those days.
Yeah, I remember reading Babysitters Club. I remember a book called Boy Crazy Stacy, which I think was the first Babysitters Club book I picked up. And I was like, it was Boy Crazy Stacy. My dad bought it for me, and I'm sure he didn't know what it was, but like, not that it was like racy, it was Babysitters Club, but still, like, I don't think that he realized, I don't know. I think my parents were just happy that I was reading.
Yeah. They're like, she's safe. She's reading a book. It's
yeah, she's reading a book. She'll be fine.
What is your favorite writing fuel?
Oh, there's something that I discovered via Sky Warren called Pocket Latte.
Ooh, what is that?
Okay, I feel like I have one 2 feet away from me, so I'm going to get up and get it.
Okay.
Okay. Pocket latte are delicious coffee squares. So let me tell you about pocket latte.
Okay.
They are a chocolate bar and also coffee. So it's like you get this square of chocolate, but it's got the equivalent of 1 cup of coffee in it. So it's like you get to eat chocolate, but then you get like, you feel like you just had a cup of coffee. And I'm very caffeine sensitive. And for some reason, like, look at it, it's just like a chocolate bar. I'm very caffeine sensitive. And even though I'm caffeine sensitive, these for some reason don't make me jittery. They like, they actually like wake me up without making me jittery. And they're delicious because it's like eating a chocolate bar.
Exactly. Oh, yum. Okay, perfect. Pocket coffee, pocket latte or pocket coffee?
Pocket latte.
Pocket latte. That's perfect. Great. Put that in the chat. Okay. Okay, this is a good question for you since you did have an interest in were writing in luxury travel. What is one luxury item that you cannot live without?
A luxury item that I can't live without. One thing, okay, this is not exactly an item, but I did get the credit card that lets you get into the airport lounge.
Yes.
The airport lounge. I need the airport lounge. And part of it is that I just don't like flying as much, very much. Like I get a lot of anxiety when I fly. I have to take like a Xanax when I fly. So the airport lounge sort of cuts down on that, you know, just like, I don't like flying very much. Let's make this a comfortable experience. And I think it's something like, it's a couple $100s a year to like have a credit card that gets you into the lounge, but I'm okay with that.
Right. I love that. Yes. My brother is a card holder with that. And he gave me an authorized user card one time. And I've just been like, oh, I can always go to the Admirals Club.
Yes. Yeah. I belong, the Admirals Club is mine too. That's what I belong to. And it comes in handy, and I travel a lot. So it comes in handy.
Yeah. Perfect. And whenever you're in Seattle, you can use it at the Alaska Lounge.
Oh, I did not know that. I'm going to Seattle in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool. Well, let me know. I live in Seattle. I'd love to see you when you're here.
I'm going
not to be a weirdo.
No, speaking of travel, I'm going on an Alaska cruise. And it leaves from Seattle. Like that's my, one of my like bucket list things. I've been wanting to go on an Alaska cruise for years and years. And I scheduled it for 2020. And of course, like it got canceled. So it's gotten canceled twice. And actually people were afraid of cruising. So it ended up being less money than I thought it would be when I originally booked the cruise. So that worked out.
I love that. Well, you're going to have such a blast. I've heard amazing things about that trip. Okay, so let's see. What is your quintessential action adventures in pop culture?
Oh, what do you mean by that?
Just like, you know, if there's any sort of like action romance or just any sort of movies, books, TV shows, whatever sort of action-y. I don't know. It was just a question I had right there.
Action-y in romance. I do like a good rom-com, but I'm not sure that all of them are action adventure. I feel like there was a very specific period when rom-coms had that. Like, you know, they've redone The Lost City, and I think that was supposed to be sort of like a modern day, like Romancing the Stone, Jewel of the Nile. I like romances like that. And but I specifically like them as movies, like even The Princess Bride. Like The Princess Bride is very much like that. Yeah.
Well, let's dig into, since I love movies and TV shows as well, I want to dig into like what you've been what you've been watching recently that you want to recommend, and maybe even what you want to tell us to avoid.
You're going to laugh. You're going to laugh about this. So I recently started rewatching the 90s show ER.
Ooh.
And when I say recently, I mean like a month ago, because there are 15 seasons of it. Okay.
It's like 25 episodes each.
I know. And they're like 25 episodes each. But something that I've been into recently is sort of, you know, like I've been around for a while, is going back and revisiting shows or books that I really, really liked at a certain point in my life, and going back and sort of saying like, was this the masterpiece that I thought it was? Like, what did I connect with? Like all of those sorts of things. Like, for example, I went back and I watched French Kiss, which is one of my favorite romance movies, but I hadn't seen it in ages. And I was like, is French Kiss still good? And yes, it is still amazing. Like it would hold up today. No problem. So I went back to ER, and it definitely, like by today's standards, it would be judged a little differently. It has some issues. It has some like sexism, misogyny, like it's got some issues. But in some ways it holds up, but I've kind of gotten lost in this like ER thing because it's so many episodes. So I haven't been watching anything else for like
since then. Yeah.
For like a month, seriously. A show that I really liked that I'm still into, but that I got to the end of was Atlanta. The Donald Glover show was really amazing.
Yeah, I haven't seen this current season, and I saw that he just got nominated for an Emmy today, which is really cool.
Season 3, I don't like something about like season 3 really, he pivots and it works, but like the first couple of episodes of season 3 are like amazing.
I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm still like in my head, he's still in at the airport holding the gun, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Get on the plane. So,
yeah, no, it's cool. Really good.
Awesome. All right. So how do you celebrate a new release?
I really like going to the movies. And my husband does not have good taste in movies. So that means I see a lot of movies by myself.
By yourself.
But I'm okay with that. So usually what I try to do on a release day is I'll try to sort of take the day off, go see a matinee. And like my favorite thing is I'll get my small popcorn with butter, and my movie theater serves alcohol so I can have a cocktail and you know, go see something that I want to see. And I also really like cake and I really like champagne. So it's kind of an excuse for me to just like have cake and champagne and butter popcorn.
I love it. Oh my gosh, it sounds like a dream. What advice would you give to your younger self?
What advice would I give to my younger self? All right, so I think I would just give my younger self words of encouragement. Like, I don't think that I have that many regrets because so many things in my life have turned out okay. But so in my day job, I work on a school campus, and there's been a lot going on with student mental health. So I find myself sort of referencing this song from probably the late 90s by Jimmy Eats World called The Middle. And it's all about how, you know, like you're in the middle of the ride, everything's going to be okay. So I think I would just tell my younger self that like everything's going to turn out fine, and just enjoy this time in your life because it's a special time, and like you're stressed about things, but everything's going to turn out okay. And just like enjoy being 20. Like I think when I was 20, like I said, I was living in New York. I was like super broke, and I just felt like painful, and like it could have felt a little different if I had had some perspective.
Yeah. You know, it just takes some time, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So going back to, you know, the fact that you did get to live so many places in your 20s and 30s, like where was your favorite place that you did get to live?
I loved Austria. I think Austria is an underrated country, and it's a place that I spent so much time there. And for a while I had a policy that's like, well, I want to see new places. I'm not going to go back to places that I've been. Speaking of revisiting places and things in your life, I would love to go back to Austria.
I love that. All right. Well, Kilby, before I turn this over to our readers to ask you some follow-up questions, where can readers find out more about you and stay in touch with you?
So I'm everywhere at Kilby Blades. I am fortunate to have a name that nobody else has that doesn't like rhyme with anything else. So it's fairly easy to find me, and I'm like at Kilby Blades or at Kilby Blades author everywhere. I do a lot actually. So I have a readers group on Facebook called Kilby's Corner, and a lot happens on my Kilby's Corner Facebook group. It's where I sort of talk about what's going on. And I also give away a lot of books, because people give me a lot of books, but like I said, I don't read paperbacks. Like I came back from Book Bonanza this weekend, probably with like 10 other people's books.
Yeah.
So I just give them away because I want readers who like paperbacks to read them. So that's the other benefit of joining Kilby's Corner.
I love that so much. Benefits for membership. It's the best. Awesome. Okay. Well, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to Kilby right now, but she is going to stay with us for some bonus questions.